We like.
Do you incorporate any of his suspension materials into your seminars, or?
On occasion, it doesn't work really well with our high-intensity training because it slows things down to try to get your feet in the stirrups and stuff like that, and it's much easier to pick up a sandbag and, run with it. But I would say that where we do use it is when we slow things down and we just do concentrated core development in our durability training sessions where we're doing, just working on ab work and, core work, and that's where the flutter kicks and leg levers and all that kind of stuff come in, and the glute ham developer sit-ups, and we will then add the suspension training in to develop core strength. It's very effective for that.
All right, tell us about the perfect push-up and the perfect pull-up. You started to do that, and then we shifted a little bit.
Well, the perfect pull-up I mentioned really is just a better way to do a pull-up or a push-up, and same thing with a pull-up. So it rotates your joints so that it's much more ergonomically correct. So you'll avoid injury. Now, if you do a ton of push-ups, eventually your shoulders are going to blow out, right? And you're going to have some sort of shoulder injury. And same thing with pull-ups. You got to be careful because your elbows will eventually suffer some form of injury for pull-ups. And so by having your joints rotate when you're doing the pushing and pulling, then you're doing something that's going to avoid injury over time. And then, essentially the way Alden, he was just a pure entrepreneur, and he started something called the Body Rev, which was kind of an interesting tool that it was, I'm not even sure how to describe it, but you had your hands in this kind of rotational device, and you spun it around in front of you, and if you could figure out how to work it, it was really effective, but nobody could figure out how to work it, and it failed as a product. And he was on the verge of bankruptcy when he conceived of this idea of the perfect push-up. And his investors fortunately backed him, and he made it, and, the rest is history. I mean, he's got that thing sold. I mean, he's selling millions of units a month through Walmart and through infomercials and whatnot.
So your point is that this expanding off of what you learned as SEALs is actually finding a place in the whole society where there are lots and lots of people who are following out the things that you guys are teaching.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting. I mean, there's no doubt that the SEALs are kind of at the forefront of the fitness world and changing fitness. And another example of that, although not created by a SEAL, is CrossFit. Now, we use CrossFit programming also as part of SEALFit. CrossFit is sweeping the world, as a matter of fact. I mean, it's unbelievable how fast CrossFit is growing. There's over 2,000 CrossFit affiliates now in the country when 3 years ago there were, I think, 200.
What is CrossFit?
CrossFit is a training program that uses the same things that I mentioned earlier, gymnastics and Olympic weights and sprint work, combines them in a program that in constant variance every day is a little bit different, all functional movements and all done at high intensity. And because of those components, it's actually treated like a sport. In fact, I just came back from the CrossFit Games last weekend, and they were phenomenal. They'll probably be on ESPN next year. It's the fourth year they've run it. And so the workouts, a lot of them have, names like Fran and Nancy and Helen and stuff like that. And it's extremely intense and extremely fun. But back to the SEALs, the very first SEALFit, or the very first CrossFit affiliate was a Navy SEAL. The earliest adopters of CrossFit and the reason they took off were Navy SEALs who brought it into the Navy SEAL training program down in Coronado. Their director of training, their top dog, not the inventor, but their director of training is a Navy SEAL. And so, SEALs have been really significantly at the forefront in both, creating products that are indicative of the way we learned how to train and then introducing them to the public, as well as, training the public.
I want to ask you about the Fit Deck in a minute, but before I do, it just occurred to me, is SEAL an acronym?
Yeah, absolutely. Not a lot of people realize that. It's a good call. So it's acronym for Sea, Air, and Land, which are the three main environments that SEALs operate on. A lot of people think we're just tied to the ocean, but we actually operate mostly on land right now, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Just as an aside, what are the SEALs in Iraq and Afghanistan doing? What are their assignments like?
Our primary missions over there are direct action, right? Basically capturing and killing the bad guys, intelligence gathering, through special reconnaissance missions. So hiking through the mountains, spending a week or two observing, a village and, trying to see the comings and goings of the bad guys and their patterns and stuff like that, and really trying to identify who are the real Al-Qaeda/Taliban booger eaters or who's just a farmer, right?
And you do SEALs, when they're out doing that sort of thing, work in real small groups and pretty much away from the rest of the forces?
Absolutely. And that's really one of the hallmarks of the SEALs, and that's why the SEALs, A, they have to be really fit, and B, they have to be very, very independent thinkers. We operate in teams of 1, 2, or 4 primarily. And then occasionally, like in Iraq, if we're going to go kick down a door in Iraq, we'll take out a whole platoon of 16 men.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's go back. What is the Fit Deck?
The Fit Deck was created by my friend Phil Black, and this also sprang from our experience in the Navy. Although Phil was doing it prior to the Navy, as he just told me the other week, I thought it came from the Navy. But when we were on, same thing, when we were on submarines, and we had all this time on our hands because, to us the submarine was a bus to get us to our target. We would go down to the torpedo room and we'd break out a deck of cards and we would flip the cards over and we would say, okay, aces are going to be burpees, which is, kind of crazy exercise we do. Diamonds are going to be pull-ups. Spades will be squat jumps, and clubs will be something else, like running in place. And we would change those exercises up every time we do it. And then you'd flip the card and you'd say, okay, it's a 10 of hearts. You're going to do 10 burpees. Flip a card again, and it's a jack of spades. Okay, you're going to do, 11, whatever spades were. I forgot, squat jumps. And so you then, as fast as you could, you'd work your way through this deck of cards. And it was a phenomenal workout. It'd take us like 35 minutes to get through the deck. Sometimes we'd do a double deck. Anyway, so Phil took that whole concept and he created a deck of cards that had the actual exercise on it. He would have a picture of the exercise with a short description of it. We have an easy, medium, and hard number of repetitions. And then he had 52 of these cards in a deck, and he'd have a couple wild cards. And so if you shuffle that deck and you decide you want to do all 52, then you've got yourself, about a 52-minute workout. And every time you do the deck of cards, you've got yourself a different workout. So it's a genius concept, actually. And now he's co-branded, so he's got a Fit Deck kettlebell, Fit Deck pull-up, a Fit Deck, cross-training, Fit Deck, for mixed martial arts. He's got them for all, even stroller strides. The guy's gone ballistic with these things. And his website, by the way, if anyone's interested, is fitdeck.com. So FITDECK.com.
These are all these websites you're giving us are places where we can find out how the SEALs are leading the fitness revolution, essentially.
That's right. And we sell the Fit Deck as well at NavySeals.com, and it's a great product. I recommend everyone have one of them in their kit bag. I mean, they're really fun and valuable, especially if you're traveling, right? If you're a traveling executive, I always hear from even our clients, hey, I fall out of shape when I'm traveling. I said, well, you know what? There's so much you can do even in your hotel room, right? There's so much. So just take a Fit Deck of cards with you and just shuffle it and start training, right? And when they do that, they're like, oh my God, it opens up a whole new world for them.
That's great. I again want to take a quick break, but when I come back, I'm going to ask you about being a warrior. And
right.
Before I do that, I'm going to remind everyone that you're listening to Of Consuming Interest, and I'm Jim Turner, attorney in Washington, D.C., chairman of the Board of Citizens for Health, and we're talking with Commander Mark Devine today, former Navy SEAL on active duty, now a Navy SEAL active reservist, and he's running fitness programs that he learned a great deal of the content of from his training as a Navy SEAL. And he's been telling us what a movement the SEALs transferring over to the civilian life has been in helping move the fitness revolution forward in the country. Mark, tell us about being a warrior.
Well, that's one of my favorite things. In fact, if you read our website, we talk about developing warrior spirit in our training. So I kind of consider our fitness program to be also a warrior development program. And warriorship goes beyond, it's one thing to just cultivate your body and your physique, so you look good in a bathing suit, right? And it's hard in the sense that you've got to do some work at it but it's easy in the sense that you don't really have to be any different. You don't have to be a different person, right? You can be, a pretty shallow, simple person and still get the physique